Hello everyone, and welcome to this video, which is in our Great Engine Game series and also in our Crazy Leela series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and it's some more odds games from Leela. In this case, again, a game against the player rated 25-25 IM, who had a huge number of games with Leela. Very interesting games, came pretty close in some games, but somehow the attacks kept on coming. And, well, let's have a look at how this one went. So e4, c5, knight c3, knight c6, g3. So Leela plays a lot of these close Sicilian type structures. And I mean, yeah, against e4, c5, you often see the structure c2, d3, e4, and then aiming for one of those slow sort of King's Indian attack-ish sort of build-ups on the king side. And it works extremely well, even with one piece missing. So f4, castles, castles, e6 from black, slightly strange. Maybe hoping to tempt e5 when you'll be able to get in d6 and undermine the centre quite quickly. But Leela isn't tempted and just plays the move g4. So black's got to try and work out how to develop. Little bit strange to put the knights on f6 and c6 and play this system. Normally, when you do this, the knight's on e7, but obviously, it's not bad at all. Black, anticipating that g5 might happen, plays the move knight e8. Maybe also looking for f5 at some stage, which is pretty typical. But after white plays bishop e3, black doesn't play f5 that you might have expected. Plays the slightly strange move queen c7. I mean, it's not terrible, but it is a little bit strange. Feels, rather unharmonious somehow. Maybe looking to go f5 later and just, getting the queen solidly developed somehow. But it feels a little bit strange. And Leela reacts with f5, and the point of that is that after e takes f5, we get in knight d5, queen d8, and g takes f5. So it looks as if Leela's make quite a bit of progress, but actually, the engines are sort of saying, yeah, okay, you've made progress, but you're still a piece down. It's still, -3 for black. Actually, the engines don't really consider that white's made much progress, even though it looks like, white has. So knight c7 was played by black, and takes, f6, blocking in the bishop, and bishop h8. And you sort of say, well, surely this has gone quite well for Leela, but the engines are still saying -3.7, and this is actually one of the problems we know with playing this sort of chess. And I think the closest experience I've had to it, haven't played any odds chess really, but is playing simultaneous displays. And what often happens is that you don't actually know how strong your opponents are. You're sort of guessing, and sometimes you get opponents where your guess is wrong. Often it's players who look like they're not very experienced in moving their chess pieces, and somehow you end up making a few strange opening choices, a few strange moves, and then suddenly you notice that your opponent's playing quite well, and then you're in a bad position and you have to get to it. And yeah, I mean, what you often notice is that you make some progress, but that progress doesn't really feel like it's definitive. You think, well, I've done quite well, but I'm still completely losing, and how do you go on from there? And I mean, what Leela's particularly strong at doing, and of course it's an engine thing, is just playing accurately over a long period of time. So in those sort of positions where you've made a gain, the opponent's feeling a bit nervous, but actually objectively, your opponent's still absolutely fine, no problems at all. Yeah, Leela just keeps on playing good moves, doesn't give anything away, and keeps on adding the pressure. And and that proves to be very effective. And this is actually what you see here. Leela doesn't try and organize a mate somehow, which is going to fail. Leela just keeps the pressure, keeps the bind, and looks for an opportunity later. So bishop g5, just hammering in that pawn on f6. Bishop e6, queen e1, rook d8, and now not queen h4, desperately trying to get in here. But just queen g3 from Leela, just building up nicely. Queen b6, b3. Again, not giving away anything, but just keeping the position. d5 and e5. So again, hammering this in, but the engines don't feel that anything particularly bad has happened. Black's still doing absolutely fine here. So black plays quite decently, going for some opening of play on the queen side, and yeah, Leela starts to add a little bit of pressure. I mean, even when you get an h5, it's still not 100% clear how you're breaking through. But of course, you know, if anything were to happen, you'd rather have that pressure on there than not. Black plays the move a4, not trying to stop anything, just leaving the structure as it is, hoping that this is solid enough. And now a really interesting move from Leela. Nothing else plays it. Leela plays the move b4. b4, what is that about? I mean, the confusing thing is that, you know, black can take in every single way here, and there's still some sort of there's still, you know, very big advantage for black. Queen takes b4. I was vaguely worried that, you know, you might get hit with that, and I'm sure that's what the human player thought too. The engines don't really think that that's really the problem. I think they tend to think that this position is somehow harder for black to break through with all the pieces, so that's a gain for white, but it's still minus 2.85. Knight takes b4, minus 1.24. Yeah, you just keep on going with h5, and they just consider that you know, what black was, I suppose, going to achieve with a takes b3, maybe exchange off a pair of rooks, you know, start yeah, loosening up the white queen side for invasion. It's not going to happen as quickly when you take on b4 with the pawn or with the queen or the knight. So c takes b4 is the best move. We're going to come with b3, but just a little bit slower. So after c takes b4, h5 played, b3, and now a very interesting move, not one that I'd expect at all, just bishop f4 from Leela. So holding this pawn on e5 and, yeah, opening up the g file against this one, and yeah, I guess kind of preparing maybe to bring the queen in. I mean, you could do all sorts of things here. I mean, b2 looks quite tempting, but yeah, then I suppose you'd be kind of blocked on the queen side a little bit. So quite understandable that black plays b takes c2. I mean, you're getting some open files and doing something. So rook c1 played by Leela, and just, yeah, looking at that pawn, maybe trying to draw the black queen away. Loads of decent possibilities for black. Knight d4 was what Torch and Stockfish wanted. They wanted to do it like this, and they thought that this would be no problem at all for black. I don't know what Leela would have had in mind there. But what Leela's opponent did was quite sensible, actually. Rook c8. So, yeah, maybe preparing to play even something like knight b4 to a2. But the point is that after rook c8, you go knight b4, and, you know, you've managed to open a file after all. And you've also got this weak d-pawn to aim for. So Leela keeps on, keeps the pieces on the board and keeps on hitting. So rook cf2, queen d4, bishop e3, queen d3. Another pawn has gone, and you're not much closer to attacking there. But okay, the queen goes a little bit out of the way, and Leela brings its queen a little bit closer to the black king. At the moment, you know, it's still very vague danger, this. You know, the game still feels very sharp, right? I mean, we've got a bishop hemmed in, we've got the king, the queen could come in, some vague feelings of a rook being able to come across, but still, you know, I mean, it's just vague danger. I mean, black's actually played pretty well up till here, and, you know, doing extremely well. But here, actually, this is where it started to go wrong for black. And I mean, I'm sure, you know, that black felt this is really the moment, right? I've got to start. I'm good. I'm safe. I've got to start going for it somehow. So that is what, yeah, that is what black did. And he played the move rook c3. So rook c3. Well, it's going for it, right? I mean, it's hitting the bishop, and if the bishop moves, then well, we're going to have stuff like the rook coming over. So yeah, pretty decent move. But it gives Leela some chances that, well, you wouldn't really expect. Yeah, I mean, Stockfish and Torch are pretty brutal in this position. They want the move d4, and that's kind of the move you need, isn't it? Really, it's a move that just sort of cuts across the white position. And you know, if you do something like bishop d4, we go knight c6, and suddenly things kind of make sense somehow. The knight's attacking the rook. We've got pieces that are going to be able to be traded, and the queen is free, and it's going to start, you know, causing all sorts of problems. Yeah, I think there's something to learn about how to, you know, the powerful moves you can play in these types of positions. But yeah, they're not easy to spot. I mean, the other nice thing about playing d4 is that you do get this possibility of putting the bishop onto d5, which can also, you know, weaken the white king as well. But rook c3 looks very strong. But Leela met it with h takes g6. Now it's not too surprising the rook e3 doesn't work here. We take. King f8, there's queen g8, checkmate, of course. King h7, there's rook g1, which is rather nasty. You're not gonna escape that somehow, and you've got all sorts of ideas. So h takes g6, and now the very cunning move bishop f3. So if rook e3, then rook h2 is just really strong. There's just no way to stop rook h8, queen h6 to g7 mate. So that must have come as a little bit of a shock somehow. So what black did was actually something reasonably sensible, which was to play the move rook c2, so stop the rook coming over to h2. And that feels fine now. And the engines were looking at white playing rook d4. You go rook c4 and then rook d2. So draw by repetition? No. We're going to go king f8 and then get the king out through that way. And that turns out to be just really good for black. Not 100% obvious to a human player, but rook h2, we go king e8, we give the piece back, and then we're just claiming that all this is pretty good. And it's true. I mean, this whole setup's only dangerous as long as the black king stays on the king side. So, but Leela's move is quite extraordinary, actually, I have to say. It's pretty spectacular. And Leela plays the move bishop e4 in this position. So the point is actually that you're exploiting the pin on the rook on d8. So yeah, you can't take on e4 because of rook takes d8. And you're using it now to attack this pawn on g6 that you've weakened with this h5 takes g6. It must have come as a horrible shock to a human opponent. The only way for black to actually fight for an advantage still is to play the move d4, but it feels pretty complicated somehow. You know, it's just really you sort of think, well, why, how, who? You know, it's really pretty rough to understand all that. But yeah, I mean, the idea is to be able, at the very least, to go something like queen takes e3 at some stage, you know, and break up the white structure. But yeah, it's quite complicated. Black played the move rook d2, and now it's just equal. But it's not easy equal. It's kind of difficult equal. So bishop takes g6 was Leela's reply. So yeah, rook and a piece down now. Obviously, big threats against the king, so black sidestepped. Getting ready to escape, but bishop f7 played, threatening queen to g8, checkmate there. So bishop f7 from black. And, you know, it looks like, well, this is a little bit desperate, right? What possibly could white have there? There is something, though, that you have to notice, and that's something that I certainly hadn't noticed just when it happened on move 33, is that with rook takes d2, you've actually unprotected the c5 square. And now, it didn't look crucial at all, but now that you've the king's moving across there, having bishop c5 checked, you could imagine would be quite dangerous. However, it's hard to see really why it particularly matters, because you know, the black king after all is escaping king e8 to d7. I mean, there's threats, right, if the bishop moves, so, you know, why is this dangerous? But Leela throws the move e6 in. And now actually suddenly it really is dangerous, because white's got a big threat here, which is to play queen h6 and then queen takes h8, which is going to be checkmate. Well, bishop g8, queen g8. So by playing the pawn to e6, you're blocking the escape square of the king on d7. So why can't you just play bishop e6? Well, now bishop c5 check comes into it. And I have to say it took me some minutes of just staring at it to understand what the point was. Because the point is that you go, if king e8, you now go f7 check. If bishop f7, there's queen e7 mate. And now the one that somehow I didn't spot for a while, I was looking at queen e7 and thinking, but why does this really work? But there's something even better here. It's queen takes d8 check. Because if you go round to c6, we've got queen b6. The king does not escape. It's forced all the way back, and then f8 queen is mate. And, well, if you go king d8, it's the same story. I go f8 queen, king somewhere, and then queen check, and then rook f8 with checkmate. So bishop e6 is absolutely losing. Now, you might want to say, look at it and say, can you find a way to hold this with black? As I said, I was somewhat surprised to find the way that black could hold here. The way black can hold is to play the move knight c6. And what's the point? Well, the point is that if you go queen takes h8 check here, black's got queen f8 here, which is quite something. It's not actually winning because the rook on d2 is hanging, so we can take on f7, take on d2. But it is holding, and if white wants, white can just go for a draw by repetition like this. King f7 and queen h5 check again, or queen h7. The point about that as well is that worth pointing out is that you can't play a move like king d6 to try and escape, because bishop f4 actually discovers the attack on the queen on a3. Oh, so many tactics, so many gorgeous little things there that are just hanging together somehow, and it's what makes Leela at odds play so unbelievably dangerous. So yeah, I mean, knight c6 was the only move, but yeah, you'd need to be pretty much on fire, I think, to find it. Black couldn't cope anymore and played the move rook e2, and then queen h6 and queen h8 followed, and black resigned because obviously bishop g8, queen takes g8 is mate. I really loved that game, I have to say. I thought it was absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it was particularly, a couple of, psychological scenarios that I recognise, as I said, from the simultaneous play, that you make some progress, but it's still not enough. And how do you keep things going? And how Leela did that, just building up slowly and gradually, was, very impressive. It's, of course, the extra piece will tell in the end, but it most likely won't tell immediately, especially if your own king is safe, and that's what Leela's, also doing. You're seeing a lot, its own king is always safe in these sort of situations. So the extra piece is not telling yet. But the tactics at the end were quite extraordinary, having taken that time to build things up somehow. Just one moment of incaution from black, and it didn't look like a moment of incaution. It looked like a very strong move, and all of a sudden it's just the stuff that Leela is unleashing there is absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, one way to draw, quite extraordinary. The only way being to let the queen back into play, a sort of a stockfish queen that attacks on the side, but then is always ready to come back to defend. But would have been very, very hard to spot this. I think even in a classical game, somehow you'd have to be really well concentrated to spot that. And also the subtle point that the bishop is able to come here when you've taken a rook on d2 is also something that took me a long time to spot there. So there we are. Hope you're enjoying these games. It's just an inexhaustible supply of glory, really. And well, I'll keep on keeping an eye on them and share some nice ones when I find them. So do keep peeled to it. Also do take a look at the ongoing video series on Mariotti. Not a well-known player, I think, to most players, but really, really worth seeing. Really a fantastic player. So thanks very much for watching, and hope to see you at the next videos. Thanks for watching.